Have you ever felt like you were sinking and no one noticed? Have you fought battles no one ever saw, cried yourself to sleep, and smiled like nothing was wrong the next morning? Sometimes the deepest pain is the one we hide from everyone, even ourselves. And it was in that dark, silent, suffocating place that I discovered something that changed everything. Stoicism. It wasn't a self-help book. It wasn't a miracle therapy. It was an ancient philosophy that taught me how to breathe in the chaos. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I used Stoic principles to overcome depression in silence, how I learned to master my mind, control anger, stay calm under pressure, deal with insults, build mental strength, and rediscover inner peace without having to tell anyone. And most importantly, you'll learn how to apply all of this practically to your own life. If you've been carrying a silent burden, you need to stay with me until the end. Subscribe to the channel now, because here you won't find empty promises, you'll find structure, clarity, self-discipline, a real roadmap to turn suffering into wisdom. Every new video here is like a dose of ancient wisdom from Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, applied to your reality. Activate the bell and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because what comes next might be exactly what you need to finally breathe again. It's strange how you can be surrounded by people and still feel like you're screaming inside, and no one hears it. Emotional pain is silent, discreet, almost elegant in the way it hides behind a smile. Many people live on autopilot, looking fine on the outside but sinking on the inside. And the worst part, often no one even notices. The world moves too fast to realize when someone has stopped functioning inside. And when that happens, the mind starts silently crying out for help. Over time, you learn to disguise it. You become a specialist in looking okay. You go to work, chat with friends, post a smiling photo. But when you get home, in the silence, everything collapses. That's when the cycle begins. Shame for feeling what you feel, guilt for not being able to escape it, fear of never becoming who you once were. This is the pain no one sees. And that's exactly where the danger lies, when the mind suffers in silence and the heart screams in a language no one understands. And here's the curious part. At this stage, even the advice you get sounds empty. You need to be strong. It will pass. But what do you do when your strength is gone? When even getting out of bed feels like a mission? That's when emotional control becomes a light in the dark. Not to pretend everything's okay, but to slowly rebuild a new internal foundation. Stoic philosophy teaches exactly that. How to coexist with pain without being consumed by it. Picture a simple scene. Someone smiles at you, but inside they're exhausted, anxious, empty. That person could be you, or someone very close. When you understand the power of perception, you begin to notice the signs you once ignored. Stoicism helps us develop this kind of awareness, not to become fragile, but to strengthen the mind with self-discipline, mental resilience, and the ancient wisdom left by the Stoic masters. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus. These names didn't magically appear in my life. They showed up when rock bottom felt like home. And it was there, in the loudest kind of silence, that their words started making sense. How do I control my anger? How do I stay calm when everything's falling apart? These stopped being just questions. They became daily practices, and when practice turned into habit, something new began to grow. But hold on, it didn't happen overnight. No one heals instantly, and no one escapes the darkness without stumbling a few times. But even stumbling teaches. It teaches you to stop blaming yourself. It teaches you to slow down. And it was during that slow, quiet, lonely process that the Stoic way of life came into play. But the most surprising part was still ahead, when I realized that maybe pain was never my enemy. Let's talk about that next. At first, it felt crazy to think that pain wasn't the problem. How could it not be the enemy? It was what stole my sleep, drained my energy, and turned my routine into pure survival. But then came the shift. Epictetus. He wrote that it's not things themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we make about them. That line exploded in my mind. I wasn't just suffering from pain itself, but from how I was interpreting that pain. It was like wearing distorted lenses over everything that hurt me. That perspective changed everything. I stopped running from pain and began facing it head-on, not as a punishment, but as a message. When a wound appears on your body, it's trying to tell you something, that something is wrong. Emotional pain is no different. It screams to alert you that something inside needs adjustment. Stoicism taught me that ignoring that signal only prolongs suffering. Listening is the first step toward transformation, and that takes more courage than fleeing. Of course, the first reaction we have is to fight what we feel, to suppress, to deny, to distract. But the more we fight it, the stronger it grows. Ever tried to push a thought out of your mind only for it to come back even louder? Exactly. That's when I started training acceptance. When a thought came, I let it pass, like a cloud. I didn't argue. I didn't blame myself. I simply observed. That is mind mastery. That is emotional control. This new way of thinking became a habit. Every time discomfort appeared, I would pause and ask, what is this trying to teach me? Sometimes it was just fatigue, other times it was self-imposed pressure, and often it was just the ego trying to control the uncontrollable. The Stoic way of life teaches that, to exit the automatic reaction mode and enter a state of awareness. It's hard at first, but in time, it becomes a kind of superpower. You feel, but you don't drown. With this new outlook, I started to see beauty even in pain. Yes, beauty, because it was pain that put me on the path of self-improvement. Without it, I would never have searched for answers. Without pain, there would be no quest for ancient wisdom, no need for self-discipline. Pain became a guide. And once I stopped seeing it as a villain, it stopped being so terrifying. Today, I understand it's possible to grow even in the darkest moments, if you change how you interpret them. And right at that point, a powerful tool came into my life. Silence. But not that heavy, suffocating silence. A different kind. A silence that heals, that organizes thoughts, that clears the soul. And next, you'll understand how this kind of silence can begin to reshape your mind from the inside out. In the beginning, silence felt like a villain. It was in silence that my thoughts would corner me, that painful memories returned, that loneliness screamed. But over time, and with Stoic philosophy guiding me, I realized silence could also be medicine. It all depends on how you use it. If you're quiet to avoid yourself, silence will hurt. But if you're quiet to listen, silence becomes strength. The difference lies in intention, and intention changes everything. I started creating small pauses throughout my day. I'd turn off notifications, step away from distractions, and simply be with myself. At first it felt uncomfortable, almost unbearable, but then it became shelter. It was there in that chosen silence that I began to hear what my mind had been trying to say all along. Sometimes it was just fatigue. Other times, life was asking for more attention. That kind of inner listening is a powerful act of personal development. I remember one practice that shifted everything. 5 minutes of silence each morning, before anything else. No phone, no thinking about to-do lists, just breathing. And in those 5 minutes, questions would arise. How am I really feeling today, or what am I avoiding? It sounds simple, but those pauses brought clarity. And through them, I began to cultivate inner peace, a peace that didn't depend on anyone but myself. Seneca was right when he said that time is the only thing that truly belongs to us, and I had been wasting mine trying to drown out my pain with noise. Social media, small talk, overwork, anything to avoid facing what was inside. But when I stopped and embraced the stillness, I saw that solitude didn't have to be my enemy. It could be a lab, a place to test my limits and train my mental strength away from the world's eyes. Stoicism isn't about escaping the world. It's about not losing yourself in it, and silence is a bridge back to yourself. It's in silence that you identify what's hurting and begin to plan your rebuild. It allows self-discipline to take root. It's in silence that you observe your patterns, recognize your triggers, and learn how to stop overreacting. This is the kind of resilience training few are willing to do, but it changes everything. And once this new relationship with silence takes hold, you begin to ask, what is actually within my control? Because the world won't stop spinning, but maybe, just maybe, you can choose how it spins inside you. And that choice is exactly what leads us to the next golden lesson of Stoicism. One of the most powerful phrases I've ever read came from Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That one idea shifted how I see life. Before it, I tried to control everything. What others thought of me, unanswered questions, even the injustices I faced. And what did I gain from it? Stress, frustration, anger. When I finally understood that so much is beyond my reach, something inside me let go. It sounds counterintuitive, but letting go of control gave me more power. I stopped trying to understand every action of others, to please everyone, to fix what wasn't mine to fix. That brought a lightness I'd never felt before. It was like my mind could finally breathe. Stoicism teaches this with striking clarity. Don't fight what you can't change. Use your energy on what depends on you, and that's where true freedom lives. In every difficult situation, I started using a simple question. Is this within my control? If yes, I took action. If no, I let it go. That filter changed my daily life. Someone ignored me? Not my control. A setback ruined my plan? I adjusted what I could and moved on. That constant practice strengthened my mind. It's like a muscle. The more you train it, the more natural it becomes. This is mental mastery in motion. Want a practical example? When someone criticizes you unfairly, the natural reaction is to defend yourself, argue, explode. But according to Stoic philosophy, your reaction is what's under your control, not the criticism itself. So breathe, observe, and ask. Does this opinion actually hold value, or is it just noise? That kind of question protects your inner peace and keeps you from wasting energy. This is ancient wisdom working in the modern world. That kind of discernment also helps manage the ego. So often our suffering comes from trying to prove something, to others or even to ourselves. But the truth is, the ego traps us in battles we never needed to fight. When you realize your responsibility lies in your personal growth, not in earning validation, you begin to walk lighter, more whole, more yourself. And that's one of Stoicism's greatest gifts. And as you keep releasing what doesn't belong to you, something deep begins to shift. You realize that strength doesn't come from applause or external recognition. Real strength is born in silence, behind the scenes. And that takes us to the next point, perhaps the most intimate and revealing of them all. One of the hardest parts of emotional pain is secretly wishing someone would notice, while not knowing how to ask for help. On the outside, you keep pretending everything is fine. But inside, your mind is screaming for rescue through a silent megaphone. And that's where the raw beauty of Stoic philosophy comes in. It teaches you that not every rescue comes from outside. Sometimes, true strength is choosing to keep walking, even when no one is watching. The truth is, no one claps for invisible effort. No one applauds when you conquer a dark thought first thing in the morning. When you get out of bed despite having no energy. When you choose kindness even with a broken heart. No one sees that. But that doesn't make it any less valuable. Stoicism honors this quiet, solid strength. It's the power of someone who fights internal battles the world will never understand. And that, right there, is noble. During the darkest phase of my life, appearing normal was my armor. I'd go to the grocery store, check tasks off my list, join meetings, but inside I was fighting for emotional survival. It might sound strange, but overcoming depression without anyone noticing was my greatest act of mental strength. Not out of pride, but because it taught me that real freedom is not needing someone else's eyes to validate your struggle or your progress. How many times have you felt weak just because you couldn't show strength? Society celebrates loud resilience, visible wins, public triumphs. But Stoicism shows another path, a quieter one, a more intimate one. Being resilient doesn't mean becoming a martyr or a hero. It means being consistent even without applause. It means staying calm under pressure day after day without making noise. It means taming the ego that craves recognition and nurturing the soul that only wants peace. This kind of strength is different. It's the kind you build when you realize no one is coming to save you. So you start building your own ladder, one step at a time. And that ladder is called self-discipline. Every small habit, every reframed thought, every managed emotion becomes part of your inner foundation. You stop being a prisoner of pain. and start becoming the architect of your own healing. That's a life philosophy. That's the power of perception in action. And it's in that quiet journey, where no one sees the backstage, that a new question begins to form. How do you keep that strength steady in daily life? The answer starts with what seems small: habits. And in the next part, you'll see how these tiny routines, the ones no one notices, are actually the pillars that sustain the mind of someone who has survived silently. Stoic philosophy taught me that great transformations begin with small habits. There's no point in waiting for motivation if you don't have discipline. And that's exactly what changed everything for me: consistency in small daily routines. I started with simple actions: waking up early, taking a cold shower, reading a passage from Seneca first thing in the morning. It might seem minor, but those rituals gave me a starting point, a sense of direction, a fresh beginning. The mind needs structure to stay strong. When you're in crisis, everything feels chaotic. So a clear routine is like a map through the storm. I knew that each morning, at the very least, I had 3 things under my control: what time I woke up, that cold shower, and my Stoic reading. Those became mental anchors, my way of telling my brain, we still have control over something. And even though it sounds small, it strengthens the mind and eases anxiety. That morning reading became sacred. Excerpts from Marcus Aurelius, lines from Epictetus, reflections from Seneca, all became an invisible shield against the world's noise. One example: reading meditations when I woke up helped me stay calm under pressure throughout the day. It was like training my mind before going into battle, and over time, I realized that this small habit was deeply shaping my mental strength. Another practice that made a big difference was writing down negative thoughts and rewriting them through a Stoic lens. If I wrote, "Nothing's going to work out today," I'd respond next to it with, "The day doesn't depend on events but on how I react to them." That's resilience training, like working out the muscles of perception. The more you practice, the more you realize the mind can be reprogrammed, as long as you feed it with wisdom and discipline. These routines also helped me ignore the negativity around me. While the world drowned in distractions, I had my own corner of care. No luxury, just presence. A warm cup of tea at night, a gratitude journal, a mindful walk. Simple things, but they reminded me daily: I'm alive, I'm in motion, I'm growing. Stoic philosophy became practice, not just theory. And because of that, the pain began to lose its grip. But something else was happening that I hadn't noticed yet. These routines were transforming my mind into a real training ground. Each day became a new chance to grow emotionally. And next, you'll see how this mindset of a mental battlefield became my greatest shield against depression. At first, I saw my mind as a traitor. It was the thing that kept bringing back painful memories, that woke me up in the middle of the night, that made me doubt myself constantly. But over time, and with the teachings of Stoic philosophy, I began to see it differently, as a training ground. And just like a muscle, it could be strengthened. Every negative thought became a weight, every emotional trigger, a push-up. And through this new lens, the transformation truly began. From that point on, everything became practice. It wasn't about avoiding negative thoughts anymore, it was about facing them head-on. When sadness came, I asked, what can I learn from this? When fear hit, I reacted with Stoic strategies: breathing, silence, reflection. I used Epictetus's quotes as a shield and Seneca's maxims as a sword. It became a daily workout of emotional control, learning how not to break down in front of my own inner demons. A clear example? Every time I felt like giving up, I made myself do the opposite. Take one more step. If the thought said, "You won't get through this," I answered with action. I got up, made my bed, brewed some coffee, and read 2 pages of Marcus Aurelius. It was my way of challenging the ego, the one that always wants us to stay in the comfort zone. And little by little, those tiny actions built an inner warrior I didn't even know I had. This mindset helped me realize that everything that happens on the outside is just a trigger. The real battle is internal. An insult, a rejection, a mistake. None of those things have real power if you have control over your mind. And that kind of control doesn't come overnight. It's forged through friction, repetition, and daily commitment to self-improvement. When you stop overreacting and start acting with awareness, your mind stops being a victim and becomes your greatest ally. With this view, even bad days took on a new meaning. They became patience training, tolerance training, wisdom training. The pain was still there, but now it had purpose, not to punish me but to refine me. Like iron that only strengthens in fire, the mind only gains true strength when tested. That's the power of Stoic perception, to transform suffering into discipline and weakness into inner resilience. That's personal development at its purest. And it's in this invisible, silent, constant training ground that the biggest turning point of all happens, the moment you stop running from your pain and start treating it as a guide. But what really happens when you finally stop hiding from yourself? That's what we're going to talk about next. There comes a moment when you can't run anymore. The pain you tried to hide, ignore, disguise, it catches up with you. And when it does, you have two choices: keep hiding or sit down and have a conversation with it. That's when Stoicism became more than just a philosophy. It became a mirror. It taught me that running from yourself is the biggest waste of life, because in the end, everything you avoid feeling turns into emotional traps. And there's only one real way out: face it. That decision to stop running is terrifying, because facing yourself takes courage. It requires you to remove the masks, accept your flaws, and look at wounds that are still open. But it's also incredibly freeing. When you stop hiding, you begin rebuilding with truth. Stoic philosophy never promised happiness, and it shouldn't. It promised clarity. And when you see clearly, even suffering takes a new shape. It becomes instruction. That's when I realized healing was never going to come from outside. Not from an external answer, not from a miracle, not from someone finally understanding me. It would come the moment I accepted that my silence spoke volumes, that my pain carried wisdom, and that my role wasn't to erase it, but to integrate it. That's when ancient wisdom met my present reality. And finally, I started to feel whole, scars and all. Want a practical step? Take a notebook and write down the things about yourself that bother you most. Then, next to each one, write what you could learn from them. This simple exercise can reveal powerful truths. Often, what we see as weakness is actually a strength we haven't cultivated yet. How to control anger? Maybe it starts with understanding what it's trying to protect. How to stay calm? Maybe it begins by accepting that losing control is part of the process too. This internal honesty builds peace. Not a peace that depends on outer silence, but the kind that comes when you accept yourself without the masks. The peace of someone who stopped trying to fit into someone else's mold, who stopped demanding perfection from themselves. That's emotional intelligence. That's Stoic maturity. That's a kind of strength that doesn't shout, but sustains. From that moment on, you no longer live to appear strong. You live to be whole, effortlessly, without an audience. And when that happens, everything shifts. Pain becomes a teacher, silence becomes a shelter, and the mind becomes a place worth living in. Now that you've made it this far, let me ask you something. How many times have you pretended to be okay just so you wouldn't worry anyone? How many times have you swallowed your pain just to keep smiling? The truth is, no one teaches us to care for the mind with the same urgency we care for the body. But what if today, right now, you chose to treat your mind like a temple, like a training ground, like the core of all your strength? You don't need applause to heal. You need clarity, structure, self-discipline. And that's exactly what Stoic philosophy can give you, if you allow it. So tell me, what's still holding you back from applying all this? What's keeping you stuck? Drop it in the comments below, because sometimes the first step to change is simply admitting, even in writing, that something needs to shift. Don't keep hiding from yourself. Don't abandon yourself again. If this video touched something you didn't even know needed healing, then subscribe to the channel now. Here, we'll continue this journey together. Every week you'll find deep reflections, daily practices for personal development, emotional control strategies, and Stoic tools to help you strengthen your mind. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a video, because your transformation begins in silence. But it doesn't have to happen alone.